Mali and Burkina Faso have issued bans on US citizens entering their countries with immediate effect.
Both countries announced their decisions on December the 30th through statements issued by their respective foreign ministries.
Mali just banned every single American from entering their country. So did Burkina Faso, Niger, and Chad. Your US passport means nothing there anymore. Trump banned citizens from 39 countries from entering America. Travel restrictions, security concerns, high visa overstay rates. Standard Washington playbook, except this time, 4 African countries looked at that ban and did something nobody expected. They banned Americans right back. Completely. No tourists, no business visas, no entry period. And it's not just those 4. Nigeria, the biggest economy in Africa with over 22,000 students in US universities, just got hit with restrictions so harsh their students can't return if they go home for Christmas. And Nigerian officials are now openly discussing reciprocal bans on Americans. This is a coordinated response spreading across the continent that's about to destroy American influence in an entire region. So let me show you exactly which African countries are shutting Americans out right now. Why Trump's travel ban just triggered the biggest diplomatic backfire in modern US history. And what happens when your American passport stops working in a resource-rich continent that China and Russia are taking over. Let's start with the spark. On December 16, 2025, President Trump announced an expansion of existing travel restrictions. 7 more countries were added to a full ban list. 19 more added to a partial restriction list. And almost all of them were in Africa or the Middle East. The official justification? National security, insufficient vetting, high visa overstay rates. The announcement said these countries pose risks America can't properly assess. So their citizens are now blocked from entering the US. Some were totally banned. Others restricted to single-entry 3-month visas instead of the previous multi-year multi-entry access. The list is massive. Full bans on Burkina Faso, Mali, Niger, South Sudan, Syria, Laos, and Sierra Leone. Partial restrictions hitting Angola, Antigua and Barbuda, Benin, Burundi, Côte d'Ivoire, Cuba, Dominica, Gambia, Malawi, Mauritania, Nigeria, Senegal, Tanzania, Togo, Tonga, Venezuela, Zambia, and Zimbabwe. That's 26 countries total in one announcement. Combined with previous bans from June 2025, 39 countries now face US entry restrictions. The Council on Foreign Relations confirmed this, makes it the most expansive travel ban in modern American history. And here's the kicker. Nigeria alone sends over 22,000 students to the US annually, making it the 9th largest source of international students. Ethiopian, Ghanaian, and Cameroonian students number in the thousands. These aren't security threats. These are people paying tens of thousands in tuition to American universities. But now they're restricted to single-entry 3-month visas, meaning if they go home for Christmas, they can't come back. Their education just got cut off. The reaction from African governments was swift and brutal. Within days, Chad made the first move. On June 5, 2025, President Mahamat Idris Deby posted on Facebook, "I have instructed the government to act in accordance with the principles of reciprocity and to suspend the granting of visas to citizens of the United States of America." Done. Chad banned all new US visas except for officials. Anyone with a visa issued before June 9th could still enter. Everyone else blocked. Then Niger followed in late December 2025. The Nigerian press agency reported a diplomatic source saying Niger is completely and permanently prohibiting visa issuance to all US citizens and indefinitely banning entry to its territory. Complete ban. Permanent. No exceptions except potentially for official government business. And the language matters. They didn't say this is temporary pending negotiations. They said permanent. That's a line in the sand. On December 31, 2025, Mali and Burkina Faso both issued nearly identical statements through their foreign ministries. In accordance with the principle of reciprocity, visa bans on US citizens effective immediately. Mali's statement was particularly pointed. They emphasized that this wasn't emotional or symbolic. It was legal, procedural, reciprocal. You treat us this way, we treat you the same way. Simple. And these aren't random countries acting independently. Mali, Burkina Faso, and Niger formed the Alliance of Sahel States in July 2024. They're coordinating security, trade, and now apparently visa policy. All three are led by military governments that came to power through coups. All three expelled French military forces. All three are pivoting toward Russia and China. And now all three just shut Americans out completely. But it's not just those four. The pattern is spreading. In October 2025, Mali required US nationals to post bonds of up to $10,000 for business and tourist visas. Why? Because the Trump administration imposed similar financial guarantees on Malian citizens. So Mali mirrored it exactly. Want to visit Mali? Post $10,000 up front. That's not technically a ban, but it's close. And even countries that haven't banned Americans outright are tightening restrictions quietly. Nigeria, Cameroon, Ethiopia, and Ghana all saw their citizens' US visa terms dramatically shortened in July 2025, from multi-year multi-entry to single-entry 3 months. So these governments are watching closely. Nigeria's presidential spokesman Bayo Onanuga already pushed back, saying the US claim of reciprocity doesn't reflect actual reality. That's diplomatic language for we're considering our options. Now let's talk about why this matters way more than people realize, because this isn't about tourism. Americans weren't flooding into Niger for vacation anyway. The US State Department has Niger at level 4 do not travel for years because of terrorism. So blocking American tourists doesn't hurt Niger's economy, but it destroys American influence. And that's the point. For decades, US presence in West Africa was everywhere. USAID programs, military cooperation, development projects, diplomatic missions. All of that requires Americans on the ground. Aid workers processing grants, military advisors training local forces, diplomats meeting government officials, contractors building infrastructure. Every one of those people now needs special exemptions or can't go at all. The infrastructure of American influence just got cut off at the knees, and the timing is devastating. Trump already shut down USAID in early 2025, cut billions in foreign aid, recalled nearly 30 career diplomats globally. 13 of those recalls were in Africa, including Niger. So American presence was already collapsing. Now add visa bans and suddenly the US has almost zero operational capacity in these countries. Aid groups are reporting rising hunger in northern Nigeria, Somalia, and Kenya because US funding dried up. Health programs in Lesotho and South Africa fighting HIV are collapsing. Northern Cameroon saw malaria deaths spike as drug supplies fell. And now Americans can't even get visas to coordinate emergency responses. But here's what really has Washington panicking. This is a template, a playbook. Chad did it in June. Niger did it in December. Mali and Burkina Faso did it simultaneously. And other countries are taking notes because the principle of reciprocity is incredibly powerful. It's clean. It's legal. It's not emotional. It just says we'll treat you exactly how you treat us. And that's impossible to argue against diplomatically. Antiguan Prime Minister Gaston Brown already condemned the US ban publicly. He said his government is deeply disappointed and that accusations about loose citizenship by investment programs don't reflect present reality. That's a government signaling they're considering responses. Senegal, Tanzania, Zimbabwe, Zambia, Benin, all on the partial restriction list, all watching to see if reciprocal bans work. And if Mali, Burkina Faso, Niger, and Chad suffer no major consequences from banning Americans, others will follow. And here's the strategic disaster for the US. These countries are already pivoting away from Western alignment. Mali kicked out French troops in 2022. Burkina Faso did the same in 2023. Niger expelled US military from Airbase 201 in 2024 after spending $110 million building it. All three are now working with Russia's Wagner Group for security. All three are deepening economic ties with China. They're not isolated, they're realigning. And visa bans accelerate that realignment by cutting off the last threads of American engagement. China doesn't care if its citizens can't get visas to these countries. Chinese projects use Chinese workers who get special permits through bilateral agreements. Russia's Wagner contractors don't need tourist visas. They operate under military cooperation deals. So when Mali bans American civilians but keeps Russian military advisors, it's a clear signal about which partnerships matter now. The US is losing access, competitors are gaining it. And visa reciprocity is the mechanism making it happen. Let me show you the numbers that prove this is systematic. In June 2025, Trump issued his first expanded travel ban. 12 countries got full bans. Chad responded immediately with reciprocal bans. Then December 16th, Trump added 7 more countries to full bans and 15 more to partial restrictions. Within 2 weeks, Niger announced permanent reciprocal bans. Within 15 days, Mali and Burkina Faso announced theirs. This is coordinated. The alliance of Sahel states isn't just coordinating militarily. They're coordinating diplomatically. Acting together gives them leverage they wouldn't have separately. And the language they're using matters enormously. Every statement emphasizes reciprocity, not retaliation, not anger. Reciprocity. That's international law language. It means we're applying the same standard you applied to us. The Vienna Convention on Diplomatic Relations recognizes reciprocity as a fundamental principle. So these countries aren't violating norms, they're enforcing them. And that makes it much harder for the US to respond. Because what's the argument? You can ban our people, but we can't ban yours. That's not a principle. That's just hypocrisy. Now, the US official position is that these bans are about security. That Nigeria, Ethiopia, Cameroon and Ghana have high visa overstay rates, that Mali, Burkina Faso and Niger have insufficient vetting systems because of instability. And on paper that sounds reasonable, except the data doesn't support it. Armenia has a 6.3% tourist visa overstay rate. Ethiopia has 8.1% tourist and 14% student overstay rates. Those are comparable or lower than some countries not facing restrictions. So why target these specific African nations? Trump himself gave the answer in November 2025 when he called Somalians garbage and said he wanted to ban immigration from third world countries. The Department of Homeland Security described restrictions as slamming the door shut on foreign invaders. That rhetoric reveals this isn't about security metrics, it's about demographics and politics, and African governments see it. That's why reciprocity feels not just justified but necessary. Because if the bans were truly about security, benchmarks would exist. Pathways to remove restrictions would be clear, but there are none. Just blanket exclusions with no conditions for reversal. And the human cost is massive. US citizens married to Nigerians can no longer bring their spouses to America under the new restrictions. The previous exception for immediate family of US citizens was eliminated in December. So American citizens are now separated from their families because of these bans. Ethiopian graduate students halfway through PhD programs can't return if they visit home. Ghanaian entrepreneurs with US business partnerships can't attend meetings. These aren't security threats. These are people with legitimate ties getting destroyed by policy. But reciprocity means Americans face the same pain now. US citizens working for NGOs in Mali can't renew visas. American journalists covering the Sahel can't get entry. Business people with contracts in Niger are stuck. And unlike African citizens who might have spent years building US ties that just got severed, many Americans have alternatives. They can work elsewhere. They can report from other regions. They can do business in other countries. So the immediate pain falls heavier on Africans. But the long-term strategic loss is America's. Because here's what happens next. The countries that banned Americans aren't isolated failures. They're part of a growing bloc of nations rejecting Western dominance. The alliance of Sahel states has 200 million people combined. They control significant gold, uranium, and agricultural resources. They're positioned along critical Saharan trade routes. And they're all now aligned with BRICS. Russia and China are investing billions, building infrastructure, providing weapons, offering loans without governance conditions. And the US response to this realignment is to ban their citizens and cut aid. That's not strategy. That's retreat disguised as security. And other African nations are calculating right now. If they're on the partial restriction list, do they accept the humiliation or respond with reciprocity? Nigeria is the biggest test case. They're Africa's largest economy, biggest population. Massive diaspora in the US. Over 22,000 students in American universities. Restricting Nigerians to single-entry 3-month visas is economically painful for both countries. But if Nigeria responds with reciprocal restrictions on Americans, that's a game changer. Because Nigeria isn't a small Sahel nation, it's a regional power. And if Nigeria bans Americans, it signals that even major US partners won't tolerate being treated as second class. The US bet for decades that African countries needed America more than America needed them. That access to US markets, aid, and visas was such valuable leverage that no African government would dare respond with reciprocal restrictions. That bet just failed. Mali, Burkina Faso, Niger, and Chad called the bluff. They banned Americans, and nothing catastrophic happened to them. They're still functioning, still trading, still securing external support from Russia and China. The sky didn't fall. Which means the deterrent effect of US displeasure just evaporated. So what comes next? More countries will follow. Senegal, Tanzania, Benin. Any nation on the restriction list facing domestic pressure will look at the Sahel model and realize reciprocity is possible. They'll announce similar bans, frame them as sovereign reciprocity, and dare the US to escalate. And the US has no good options. Escalating means more sanctions, more aid cuts, more isolation, which just pushes these countries faster toward China and Russia. Backing down means admitting the travel bans were a mistake, which Trump will never do. So we're stuck in a cycle where each US restriction triggers African reciprocal bans, which reduces US influence, which prompts more US restrictions. A death spiral for American power in Africa. And it's all happening while the world watches. Asian countries see African nations successfully using reciprocity against the US. Latin American countries see it. Middle Eastern countries see it. If the strategy works in Africa, why not elsewhere? Venezuela is already on restricted lists. Cuba too. What happens if they announce reciprocal bans on Americans? What if more countries realize that US visa power only works if recipients accept the hierarchy? The moment you reject the hierarchy and apply the same rules back, the power evaporates. This is the end of automatic American access. For 50 years, the US passport was a magic key. It opened virtually every border, gave automatic credibility, conferred privilege. That era is ending. Not everywhere, not all at once. But in an entire region of Africa, American passport holders are now treated exactly how African passport holders are treated in America. Restricted, suspect, unwelcome. And that symmetry, that equality, is what terrifies Washington, because it proves American exceptionalism was always just leverage. And leverage only works on people who accept it. 4 African countries just stopped accepting it, and more are coming. If this showed you how the balance of power is actually shifting, hit subscribe. Drop a comment on whether Nigeria will be next to ban Americans or if they'll stay quiet. And share this because most Americans have no idea their passport privilege just got challenged in a way that changes everything.